Futurama Issue 3. The Planet Express flies over to the Galactic Farmers Market, and Fry sees the flea market of the future for the first time and isn't that interested in it. Farnsworth says he doesn't want to shop with them, and tells them to split up and meet at the food court later. Bender's gonna ignore Calculon's restraining order and try to get his autograph. Wouldn't he have gotten it last time he talked to him? Amy complains that a lot of losers go to flea markets, and she gets recognized by 3 of her ex-boyfriends at once, which is less believable than just one of them. Fry thinks the clothes are cool, and insists on a slightly cheaper price for a stained shirt. It turns out there's a press pass for harassing celebrities. I guess it's something that's paid for. Bender's escorted away by police, and the shopkeeper notices that he's a Calculon fan and says he has some merchandise. Bender thinks the shop is selling a bunch of junk, and the salesman says people love everything, as the artist makes a dig at Family Guy, with a box set for all of the episodes, unrealistically showing off only 2 of the main cast of the show, as if Brian and Peter are the only main characters for most of his episodes. Bender asks to be taught how to sell crap, and says that he'll provide him with all the crap he could sell. I like how the comic even manages to make a story where the characters go to a shopping mall interesting. Farnsworth says he'll only buy the Doomsday device if he can test it out first. I guess he'll do it on a planet we won't know about to get away with it without us seeing it, or he'll forget. Why would this guy... Maybe he's only getting away with selling this because nobody actually believes it works. It's refuge and audacity. Nobody thinks he'd actually sell a Doomsday device here. Leela calls something cute and finds out about a pet that's an orphan, and she sympathizes with it because she thinks she's an orphan too, and it's the last of its kind. The pet was spayed when born specifically to make sure she'd be worth a lot to collectors. Leela hasn't heard of the needy Newbie pets because she doesn't get out much because she's ashamed of her appearance. I guess because people think she's in a weird uncanny valley because she looks like a human except for one detail and no one else is like that. While aliens are something people can get used to and know about. Then Amy's parents show up, revealing that her mother was looking for this pet for a long time. Her father isn't happy that she's wasting his money on nonsense again, and wants to go ride the hover bull in the food court. Amy's mother offers a much higher price than necessary to get the pet, and she finds Leela familiar and says that Amy talks about her all the time for being single. Leela doesn't get too offended, being surprisingly patient. And out of nowhere, Amy's mother decides to give the pet to her, saying that she loves collecting newbies. How could she properly take care of a lot of these pets at once? Wouldn't she want the animal for her collection? Wouldn't it be illegal to own too many pets, like in the real world? She invites Leela to a weekly collectors meeting at her ranch. Leela thanks her in what's been the boring part of the issue so far. Why should I care about her getting an ugly pet she'll only have for one story? I guess it's gonna become a dangerous monster they'll have to defeat. Why did she invite Zoidberg too? She doesn't even like him. It cuts to later that week where we see a taxi flying towards a house. And at first I didn't care as much about the dialogue because I didn't know who was talking. Zoidberg tells a joke and Leela goes into Amy's house, telling him to behave himself because there's a lot of nice things that he's not used to. It cuts to him gorging himself moments later. Leela apologizes about his behavior, and Amy's mother tells her not to be sorry because that's the food left over from her meeting 2 weeks ago. It was rude of her to not throw the rotten food away out of laziness. Leela says she can't wait to get another pet so that she could give her a playmate. Amy's mother says that'll decrease its value and you can't let them touch until you have the entire set. That doesn't make sense to me. The pet looks sad as Leela asks if the animals get kept locked up in cages all alone. And somehow Amy's mother says that's what pets are for. She must be joking. Leela clearly felt sorry for the pets, but doesn't bother complaining about that remark. Amy's mother holds a boring meeting, pointing out that someone's collection increased in value. They clap for Hattie, who thanks them. Amy's mother forgets Zoidberg's name, and Leela thanks everyone when they clap, embarrassed by Zoidberg's obvious loneliness. It turns out Amy's mom always starts meetings by showing off her huge, almost complete collection. You'd think this kind of cruelty to the pets would be illegal. I guess since she owns the planet Mars, she also has control over its laws. So there's no laws against keeping newbies in cages here. Why are they called newbies? It's not funny. She wants to find out about each member's new pet. I don't care! Zoidberg horrifies them because of how Leela's pet looks. Amy's mom wants to focus on her own collection and ignore Leela's animal. Leela lampshades that she thought the point of the group was to share their experiences with the pets with each other. Yeah. Why would they keep putting up with her instead of leaving and having their meetings without her? Amy's mother correctly figures out that Leela lets her pet sleep in bed with her because she's single. Wouldn't she already have Nibbler for that? Leela finally stands up to her for thinking she's better than her because she's rich and has a big collection because of that unfair advantage. So Leela decides to buy the last two newbies on her, even though she's not as rich as her. So that wouldn't be likely. Amy's mother acts antagonistic to her after that, because she can only be polite for so long. It's too bad. I was just noticing how she's not as bad as she could be until now. It cuts to the next day where Leela's back with the crew. Farnsworth says they have to deliver used dentures for laser floss testing. Hermes says that Bender doesn't need an assistant because he does nothing and says he'll be watching him. Amy's insulting but still calls Leela her friend and hopes she doesn't like her less because of her mom. Fry annoys Farnsworth talking with 70s slang out of nowhere just for comedy relief. And Hermes complains that his hair got stolen, clearly because of Randy who wanted it as a wig. Hermes says that a doomsday device in books went missing. For no reason they don't all assume the new guy's the thief. And instead Hermes accuses Zoidberg because everyone finds him annoying and wants an excuse. Bender's dialogue makes it obvious from his flattering of the thief that he's clearly the thief. And yet nobody says he's the thief. As the thief person. I guess they just don't want to provoke him, and Leela and Fry would rather focus on getting in the spaceship. Leela's looking for newbies on the internet to buy, and for no reason, the autopilot of the spaceship turns evil and bothers Fry. Leela would clearly recognize the sounds he's making and know what's going on. Instead, she somehow stays oblivious when she's supposed to be smart. There's a way to make her not always so above it all without just being annoying and forced. Leela goes to the flea market, and predictably Amy's mother asks to buy the pets and gets to buy right away because she offers a lot of money for it. So Leela just wasted her time. And hours. Amy's mother acts condescending and offers her a consolation prize later that she'd clearly hate. Fry finds some clothes looking just like his and sees Bender and finds them familiar, but just asks if he's a Bender unit. Well, there was another robot that looked almost just like Bender, but with a goatee. I suppose it's not impossible to believe that he'd think he wasn't Bender, because robots can look similar to each other. And it could just be a coincidence that the red jacket looks like his. But since Planet Express just got stolen from, and Bender made himself extremely obvious as the thief, these two should immediately get a clue. Especially since they'd recognize Bender's voice. Leela says these look like some of the parts missing from the ship, and that must be why the autopilot malfunctioned. She agrees to buy the parts, and Leela gets an email that someone has the animal she's looking for. She smartly says there's no point in even bothering, and Fry tries to get her motivated again with a depressing speech with a downer ending. Leela lampshades that he wasn't being inspiring, so he had no reason to say that. Farnsworth then calls her and has some bad news about the newbie. Zoidberg was looking after him and took him out and sat him on the corner next to his own pet. The two creatures merged together, so Amy's mother was right, it would decrease his value. How's the resulting creature not as big as both of them combined? One of them won over the first one. Farnsworth ran some tests on the alien with his mind-reading device, and found out that the newbies are the genetically altered creations of a corporation. And when one of each kind of newbie is finally gathered together, they'll form a single giant creature to rule the earth and destroy humans. Why won't the corporation just form that creature right away if they want that? If they're the ones making the newbies, what incentive do they have to separate all the newbies from each other? I guess the people selling the newbies have to give the money they get from selling them to the people who had that goal. So they think it's worth delaying their world domination goal if they end up making some money from selling the pets first, which they'll need more in the beginning. So after Leela's told some news that Amy's mother would probably just dismiss as a lie anyways, there's a lot of space traffic to deal with, and the Planet Express gets damaged and it's a bumpy landing on the vampire planet. Go figure, Amy's mom is already here, and go figure she won't believe Leela. It turns out Zoidberg bought one of the newbies because he likes how non-judgmental the newbies seem to be. He turns down the bribe as well, even though money would solve his problem of constantly being poor and depressing us. He says all mankind did for him was chase him out of libraries for no reason and chase him away from landfills. He didn't have money to pay for it, so he paid with a few blood samples he had lying around. Fry didn't recognize the association that Nosferatu had with vampires, so he's surprised that there's vampires. Leela's told she won't get a ride back to Earth because Amy's mom wants to get back at her and it's getting dark. Zoidberg says he'll give them a ride home in a hover caddy and they can come back for the ship tomorrow. He's asked where he got this, and he says that this is where he goes home to every night, since he doesn't have the money for an apartment. While it comes out of nowhere, I'm just happy that Zoidberg got to be useful. And I liked that this guy's nice to him. Amy's mom says she's stranded because her hovercar engine is out of oil. There are so many different ways of fueling stuff and providing energy, even in the present day, and she lives on Mars, not even Earth. She has no reason to still be relying on oil. Zoidberg says his car has room for her, which is good because I suppose Amy would be sad if he left her mom on a vampire planet. Farnsworth shows two newbies fusing together, and Zoidberg makes me sad by asking how many friends he can lose in one day. Leela says she wasn't trying to beat her, just prevent her from making a mistake. She's lying here because she didn't even know it was gonna be a mistake until recently. But it's smart of her to lie to get her to stop resenting her. Amy's mom thanks Leela. At least she's not all bad. She says she's learned her lesson and will give up collecting the newbies, and then pesters Amy for grandchildren. Farnsworth hopes Leela learned a lesson from this for some reason when he doesn't care about anything. Leela says to always have fun with your hobby, or you'll lose sight of why you started it in the first place. That's true. He says she'll spend a year paying for the damages to his ship. He must be really desperate not to spend his own money. Couldn't he just sell something he invented for $1 gajillion and pay off any debt he wants right away? I guess he really doesn't want to put up with the months-long process of trying to patent something, convincing people that they want to give it a chance. But couldn't they sell an invention to someone rich enough to afford it? Hermes seems as sadistic as him here. I feel like that's out of character. Then Bender says that Amy's mom offered to sell him her entire collection of newbies for 1/10 of their worth, so he's gonna be rich. Then he plans on opening a petting zoo and letting them start reproducing, which will clearly just result in them combining together into a huge monster. And he's trying to get their attention by saying this thing that you'd think they'd be a lot more worried about. But instead he says guys twice at the end while they've got their backs to him. That's just confusing. This issue is about Amy's mom and Leela trying to buy the last few rare artificially created pets to complete a collection. The pets have miserable times trapped in cages, but it turns out that's necessary to keep them from fusing together into a giant monster. So Zoidberg ends up saving the day out of nowhere because it turns out he has a hovercar that can get to the vampire planet and blood samples to pay for the last one. So the story subverted my expectations and they didn't have to fight a giant newbie at the end after all. There's not much to say about the story. It was kind of boring sometimes.